TopMedTalk.
Well, hello, I'm Desiree Chappell, and this is TopMedTalk. We are here in Orlando, Florida for Anesthesiology 2019, the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. With over 14,000 delegates, this is the largest gathering of anesthesiologists and anesthesia providers in the world. Now, I'm joined by my co-host, editor-in-chief, Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty. How are you?
Morning, Desiree. I'm peachy.
Peachy. I would say that. I would say that you're bright.
And wearing my peachy socks.
Yeah, we didn't coordinate this morning. That was a problem. Well, glad you're here, Monty. I know you were not able to join us on Friday because of your prestigious award that you won, the Carey Person of the Year, Carey Association London.
Very, very, very
Person
proud of that
you should
award.
be. That's very cool. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
We are also joined today by Saul Aronson, friend of TopMedTalk and professor of anesthesia at Duke University. Hello, Saul. How are you?
Pleasure to be here, Desiree. Good morning.
Now, TopMedTalk is here for its third year at ASA. This year, we're in the trade exhibition. We have our own beautiful space. Everyone on Twitter, hello. Here's our beautiful space. Now, we also want to thank the ASA for support of TopMedTalk. During the meeting, we really appreciate the engagement and desire to share the knowledge that we gain through these conversations with the world. So thank you very much. So diving right in, our conversation today, it's all about the Perioperative Quality Initiative and fluid management. And our special guest, which is definitely a friend of the TopMedTalk family, a favorite of ours, Tim Miller from Duke University. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Good morning, Desiree. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for sitting down with us. I know we've had lots of great conversations on TopMedTalk about fluid management and the Perioperative Quality Initiative. So I just kind of wanted to do a little bit deeper dive on some of that today as well. And before we get going, we also have Mike Grocott from Southampton. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Morning, Desiree. Great to be here.
Thanks for sitting in with us. You're joining. You look slightly different because you have these really cool silent disco headsets on. You look like you're jamming.
It's feeling good. So I'll see how the conversation goes, but I was planning to stay with the fluids.
Keep them engaged for now.
That's right. So just make sure that we're all on the same page, and everyone that's listening out there, if they're just now joining TopMedTalk, we have several members of the board of the Perioperative Quality Initiative sitting right here at this table. Tim, can you tell us a little bit more about what POQI is, what that Perioperative Quality Initiative is?
Yeah, it's an international organization founded about 5 years ago now, which is the aim is to organize consensus conferences around perioperative medicine, really to try and, there's this burgeoning field of perioperative medicine, and it's to try and get groups of experts together to do practical manuscripts with consensus statements for the everyday practitioner based on topics around perioperative medicine. We have done 7 consensus conferences so far, so about 2 a year. The first 4 have been published, and the next 3 are in various stages of the publication process. So it's been a fantastic journey. We have more planned, and I think they've been hugely successful. Yeah, we've got a website which
Mike's showing us here.
Well, Mike, and a Twitter page which Mike runs. And how many followers now, Mike?
642 at PeriopQI.
That's on Twitter. Your handle on Twitter is
our Twitter handle. So please sign up.
Yeah, and then the website is, what's the website address?
Is www.POQI.org.
Okay, great. And Mike, can you tell us about what the website looks like and what it's? I know that there's going to be some changes coming up, but what can we find for resources on the website?
So you've hit the nail on the head. The website is all about resources from the POQI process. So it gives you access to the manuscripts. There's a little bit of information about the meetings, and then also we have the infographics, which are a really key element of communicating the messages that come out of POQI meetings. The infographics are available there for anybody to freely download. So everything is open access. It's intended as a resource for the anesthesia and surgery communities and more widely.
And Tim, these different articles, they're published in different journals. It's not one specific journal, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've, so far they've published in Perioperative Medicine, in ANA, in the BJA, and we're not affiliated with any particular journal. So they will be published in different journals, and the journals have been very receptive. I mean, I think they want to see the consensus statements, the type of which are produced by POQI.
Yeah, and all of it, I know on the website it's free and open access, but it doesn't matter on the journal sites. They're also free there, and you can get to everything.
We've discussed the different publications with the different journals, and so far all journals have agreed to put the articles as open access. So all of them so far have been open access.
Fantastic. So you don't have to have a subscription.
Correct.
Subscription for that.
And so far there have been 8 POQI sessions.
7.
No, 7. Sorry.
So far.
And what were they? What are they?
This is testing my memory.
I know. We can pull them up.
This is a cognitive function test.
I very easily know. So the first one was in Durham, North Carolina, and core topics around enhanced recovery for colorectal surgery, fluids, analgesia, measurement and quality.
And that was a partnership with the American Society for Enhanced
that's what I wanted to
Recovery,
ask too. You guys partner with different organizations to create these as well.
Yes, so ASA really helped to get POQI going, and they helped with the financing and the organisation of particularly some of the first conferences. So that first one was partnered with ASA, as was the second one, which was in Stony Brook, New York, where TJ Gann is chair, who was the president of ASA at the time, and that again. Was organised with the help with ASA, and the ASA board chose the topics and that they really wanted to do consensus statements on, and that was around topics which were slightly new to enhanced recovery, nutrition, management of post-op ileus and GI dysfunction. Patient-reported outcomes was the third.
So how many publications in total have you guys done? So it's not for the lack of...
No, I mean, there's been, I would say, we've probably 25 to 30 publications, because we've had editorials, we've had infographics that have been published by the journals, and at least 1 up to 3 editorials for each POQI. So it's been a huge number of publications. In fact, at our ASA meeting on Friday, TJ put up a slide showing all the publications that have come out of POQI, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I have 15 listed right up here, all on patient-reported outcomes, GI dysfunction, joint consensus on optimal analgesia and enhanced recovery. So covers a broad range of ideas. Well, we have you here to talk about, what was it, the third POQI that you guys did on fluid management?
The third was on blood pressure, the fourth was on opioids, and the fifth was on fluid physiology.
Wow, I'm really behind the times. Okay.
And
fluid
physiology was back at Duke, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, fluid physiology. But you guys... did some of the hemodynamic management and some of those things, which one did that come out? Which POQI did that come out?
That was the first one. And that, that may need revisiting. That's a part of the process, is, fluid management in general. There's been a huge amount of literature that's come out on fluid management with large studies, such as the Relief study published in New England Journal, other studies published in major articles. So part of the process will be, at times we will go back and revisit some of these topics. So the first POQI, I think, was back in 2016, and it's only, it's amazing how much literature has come out since then.
So if people go into the current website and they go to the top of it, so as we said, POQI.org, and they click on the tables and figures, the top 3 that come up are the original goal-directed therapy and enhanced recovery. It includes the so-called risk-adapted matrix, and it includes a hemodynamic framework. Now, I think the good news is there isn't much that needs changing. But there is one key component of it that I think you changed in a recent publication with Paul Miles, and that was the suggestion that the default mode, if you're not using more advanced monitoring and it's minor surgery, was so-called zero balance. And we're fairly confident that that's wrong now. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, I think the Relief study was a fantastic study published in the New England Journal, and I think that's the key message that came out of that study. Over the years, we've become more and more restrictive within enhanced recovery.
We hear that word all the time, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that the meaning of that word, or how it was interpreted, changed over the years. Brigitte Brandstrup's original study, being restrictive was about 1 to 2 litres positive, and the liberal group was 4 to 5 litres positive. But over the years, being restrictive has turned more into sort of this theory of zero balance, and we gave less and less fluid. And I think that the relief study showed us that really zero balance group was associated with more acute kidney injury and more surgical site infection, and just reset the balance that we should again aim for about 1 to 2 litres positive. So that's the key change, I think, that has come, and that's the key change that we published on in a recent manuscript that I wrote with Paul Miles.
Yeah, that's great, and just totally changed. So it's a risk matrix, and so 1 to 2 liters positive for all patients.
We don't have to be really restrictive with our fluids, and that can be a little bit harmful, particularly with regards to the kidney. So we just want to, when we're in that grey zone, or when we're thinking about whether we should give fluids or not, beforehand I think we were thinking, we're better to stay a little bit more on the dry side, and now that's subtly shifted to a moderately liberal approach.
Michael?
Yeah, well, we should be fair to the originators of enhanced recovery, who did not talk about fluid restriction. They talked about avoidance of fluid excess.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think it's been kind of translated over time to become restriction, and then really hardcore.
And in some countries in particular, it became... You'll hear some countries talk about it being an enhanced recovery thing to run people dry.
Yeah.
And that is not what was said. So if you look at the UK guidance, for example, it does not say that. It says just avoid fluid overload and use advanced hemodynamic monitoring for more complicated patients.
It's really interesting that too much of a good thing obviously isn't necessarily a good thing, and the overzealous interpretation of a soft suggestion. My curiosity, hearing us talk and review the recalibration of what was misinterpretation of an original, adaptation curves are slow, and it's a big barge that's often hard to turn. We're only now beginning to see the uptake of goal-directed fluid therapy and even enhanced recovery, and it's becoming much more mainstream, but its uptake has been slow. Is that recognized as the recalibration of fluid being defined as a little positive as opposed to zero balance, keeping up with that uptake, or is that a pivot that we also now have to be very focused on making sure that the science of goal-directed fluid therapy is understood by our colleagues? It's a philosophic question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, is the answer. I do think a lot of people still associate enhanced recovery with fluid restriction, and if you look in the literature, there is a fair amount of literature now. Even the consensus guidelines are starting to say avoid. They're published 2 or 3 years ago. Avoid, fluid overload, and suggest a zero balance approach. So it is out there in a number of guidelines, and a lot of people will still associate that with enhanced recovery. So I think it's an important message to get out there that has changed a little bit.
Have you seen people changing that in their protocols? There's one of the infographics that I love from Matt McAvoy and his group at Vandy still lists, or in the infographic that I have, it still lists zero balance fluids. And so do you think people are really starting to change it?
Some.
Yeah.
I think that...
we talked to a lot of people in the space.
Yeah,
so I haven't heard that people actually are doing that.
We had a debate about this at the ASA meeting on Friday, and a number of the folks that were talking to me saying that they have changed their protocols and they're becoming a bit more liberal, but they are the people that are at the meeting.
Those are the leading edge.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so whether
early adopters.
I think there are probably a lot of people still doing quite a restrictive approach, out in the real world. So that's an important message to get out, I think.
I would guess that most practitioners in most hospitals in the UK are not aware of relief. And are still on the curve towards giving a bit less.
That would be my expectation as well.
I don't know if that's your feeling, Monty.
Agree.
Yeah, it's taken us 5 years to sort of get the buzz of enhanced recovery and the fluid management that is associated with that. And I think that has, in the common adaptation, been equated with zero balance or restrictive to mean less. And I think it may take us another 3 or 5 years to pivot this change management practice.
Did you think? Sorry to interrupt, but did you think that the switch from like and let's speak specifically about like colorectal, the switch from like tons of fluid and just not fluid overloading, but when I first started 12 or 13 years ago, the talk was like we were still giving a lot of fluid, and then within just a couple years, I felt like we really went to don't give them any fluids, and that was before enhanced recovery. And so, like, walk me through the timeline of how fluids have changed just in the last 10 years or so.
I mean, things always lag behind literature, but the Brandstrup study, it was published in 2003 that first coined the term restriction, and I think part of the problem is it's a confusing term, and she's admitted that herself, that really it was avoidance of excess fluid. That's what it was. But just think about the term restriction. The very term itself, you think you're really dialing back. And so over the years, I think that became the way we did things. And
but that was kind of in a short time, I feel like.
Yeah, people felt fluids were associated with harm. And I think it's interesting. You can almost equate quite a similar thing now with opioids, you could say, is that we're going less and less and less and less and less and less.
It's actually a really great analogy, Tim. I think there's
the uptake on that's been
some poetic balance to that. Yeah.
I hate to go to over-analogize, but I mean, you can look at politics and the swim from Democratic to Republican, and having grown up with Monty as a mentor, talking about shires back in the 1970s. This debate has gone on and on. We are uniquely placed currently by the fact that we actually have data. So we're really starting to have large, meaningful clinical trials. Relief being a great example, that can guide practice and hopefully maybe minimise the swing on those oscillations. They probably won't go away altogether, but at least get some rationality into it.
Monty just showed us an article over here.
I always refer back to it as 1967. So you remember Francis Moore and Thomas Shires, two US surgeons, and you'll associate one of them with the description of the so-called third space, and therefore this mystery space where fluid sequestered itself that should be chased. And the idea that you can't give somebody too much fluid. Well, Moore and Shires got together in 1967, wrote an article called Moderation, to say, hang on a second, you can have too little and you can have too much. What you're looking for is the Goldilocks spot. And they say that there's no way that you can actually make things better by inundation. They say, force feeding is never the right way to achieve a steady state. And then the pendulum swung back in the last 15 years to be desiccation. So myself and Mike wrote a quoted article in the APSF, the Patient Safety Foundation, I don't know what it is right now, about 5-6 years ago or so, saying, we should revisit. It's 1967 that they were saying, calm down. And we're still there in 2019.
But I do think it's very true what Mike has said. We're starting to get data, and the title of my presentation on Friday was, Perioperative Fluid and Hemodynamic Management, Evidence from Big Trials, and it's really only in the last 2 years that we've been able to say that, because we've got these large trials published in JAMA, in the New England Journal, which is fantastic for this space.
It's just our human inclination to have a knee-jerk response to something that we perceive as harmful, to revert to an extreme, response. But we need to be elegant, and I think our data is now helping us understand what the definition of elegant is with respect to fluid. But I think the principle of moderation, or we always talk about what is the right dose. The answer is enough, but not too much for everything, albeit opioid management, albeit fluid, albeit blood pressure sweet spots that we're trying to come up with, and we're only beginning now to understand where those are. I think we have to remind ourselves to be physicians, and we need to be physician scientists, and not reflexive beings that lose the elegance of the practice of medicine.
I think one of the things that's seriously hampered fluid management is, for all the right reasons, but it's turned out being a bad thing, I think, is making IV fluids far too accessible and affordable. A litre of intravenous crystalloid in the United Kingdom is about $1.50. you wouldn't get a Frappuccino for that much, would you? And that's a life-saving... I'm not suggesting we pump up the price of these things, but because of that, there's this kind of, just throw another bag up, It's just another bag of saline, It's just throw it in. And, if it was 100, I'm not saying don't take this away and make the price of saline $100. But if it was $100, people would be saying, "Oh, hang on a second, this is an important therapeutic intervention.
Yeah.
Let's think about this carefully."
Yeah, I think we're human nature is to always find the pathway of least resistance.
Yeah.
And it's just easy to have extreme, if you will, behaviors because you don't have to think about staying on the road and however narrow that road may be. I think it's hard to be a doctor, and I think we have to remind ourselves that there's a science that underscores what we do, and we should always hold ourselves to that challenge.
So an interesting tension, because we on TopMedTalk and more generally frequently talk about the problems of the evidence to implementation gap, and there's compelling evidence that we can't get people to do stuff.
Right.
On the other hand, we reliably see interventions, and you can look at hemofiltration or mechanical ventilation in critical care, fluid therapy, oxygen therapy, where once we get religion, we get it in a really big way, and then 20 years later we discover that we've ventilated too hard, we filtered too much, we gave too much oxygen, we gave too much fluid, and I mean, they're difficult elements to balance.
Right.
So speaking of evidence to practice, Tim, for fluid management, I mean, what is it enough just to have the blood pressure? I mean, it's really hard to do fluid management in the OR these days. So what are some of the things that we can do to better manage fluid?
So, we have our maintenance. You can talk about the whole perioperative journey. So for our enhanced recovery pathways, patients can freely drink water until 2 hours before surgery. They have their carbohydrate drink. And then we have balanced fluids on a pump on one IV at 3 mils per kilo per hour.
This is what you guys do at Duke
based
for
on
your
ideal
protocol.
body weight.
Yeah.
And then we do fluid boluses on in our second IV based on advanced monitoring on goal-directed hemodynamic therapy.
On a pump is a really important bit, though.
The first, we have our background fluids on a pump, and then boluses. We use 250 mils.
So you don't get the roller ball open, turn around, oops, another litre gone. Better put another one up.
Exactly.
Or I can't give the drugs.
How was the adoption of that?
Good. I mean, we
Do you get pumps in every room? That is the number one thing that people complain about. I can't get pumps in every room.
Yeah, we have no problem with that. We have pumps in every room. So it's and it's something that we started for enhanced recovery, and now it's it's become standard of care. Again, we talk about adoption, but it's become standard of care for a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It's the way we do things.
Yeah.
Whereas when I first arrived, it was the sort of see the circle 5, 6, 7 bag of crystalloid, and they were just dripping in throughout the case. So it's been a sea change, and but I think it's become the standard way at our institution of doing things, and I think it aligns with the evidence currently.
Okay.
But fair enough, Tim, but I work with you, and I think we have to be honest. How steep was that slope? How easy was it for you to change that behavior?
Well, especially with advanced, monitoring and technology and, the protocols and things like that.
Yeah, it was steep to a degree. It's easier than some aspects because this was mainly intraoperative. So it was mainly changing the behavior of anesthesia providers, CRNAs, residents, which I think is easier, for instance, than trying to change things out on the floor or preoperatively when there's that many more parties involved. So I'm not going to downplay it, but I think that is one advantage of the intraoperative management.
But I'm assuming you enabled the process by making pumps available for everybody, and as part of the setup, the fluid's on a pump. So now you'd have to be really awkward cuss to take the pump away and take the bag out. People are just too lazy to do that. Yeah. Is that true? It's
Absolutely.
a bit like,
Absolutely. It's got to be easy.
The saline lactated ringers story, we tried education for years. And then one weekend, someone just said, look, take all the saline out of the carts and put lactated ringers in. Fixed.
Yeah.
Then someone has to go find the saline. It's still there, but it's just education, bribery, number one. Number two, just do it for them.
And with goal-directed therapy, it's having the monitors in the room available, and it's part of the reason we still, we do it on every case.
I know I've heard you make this point before because people are like, "Oh, do you risk stratify for advanced hemodynamic monitoring?" No, I mean yes and no.
I mean, I've published with Monty on risk stratifying, as we just talked about. The greatest benefits in the highest risk cases, but we personally do it on every ERAS case at Duke. And part of that reason is the standardization. The monitors are in the room. It's an enhanced recovery patient. This is the way we do it. We accept the greatest benefits in the highest risk patients, but we do the same approach for every patient. And we've had good results.
And I guess, so the health economics might not add up, but we're not assuming that there's harm in the low risk patients. We're just assuming that any benefit is so incrementally small as to possibly not be counteracted by the cost of the intervention.
Well, I also think, from what I've observed from going around lots of different places, you reach a threshold where people, if they're highly selective with the cases, they can't remember how to turn it on.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
So therefore...
Or when am I supposed to use this? Are you sure this is right on the line?
Where's the switch again?
Yeah.
But broad adoption is usually more cost effective because you don't have to go through the cycles of retraining and you don't have the unintended consequences of not using it on certain cases. Do
you feel like people have started using that on a lot more like non-enhanced recovery cases? Because they're so much more familiar with it. And
yeah, absolutely. And I think once you give people the option, that certain people are going to opt for the easiest approach, and they'll be like, I don't need it in this case. So and there'll be a wide variability, I think, in how it's used. So we've stuck with the approach of just using it for everyone.
It's actually an interesting analysis to, if you will, quantify the advantage of doing it routinely because it's easier to do and it's more likely to be done than do it selectively, as one would, argue in a pure sense. What is the lost opportunity when you don't do it when you should because it isn't routine is an interesting analysis.
One thing that I did want to talk about back to POQI, because I think this is such a huge point. We've mentioned it a couple times. The most recent one that you've done was with the ADQI group. Can you tell us who they are, what that is, and what you guys did in Cambridge?
Yeah, so the ADQI group are the Acute Dialysis Quality Initiative, which has been running for around 20 years, I think. They've done 40 consensus conferences. Going back to their second consensus conference, which defined the rifle criteria that we all use now and have done over the years for defining acute kidney injury. So they are well established. In fact, the POQI process was very much developed based on ADQI. And Andy Shaw, very involved in both organizations, did a great job in bringing the two organizations together for POQI 7 and ADQI somewhere in the 30s or 40s, which occurred about a month and a half ago in Cambridge, UK. So it was an ADQI POQI on sort of perioperative nephrology, and we got to debate.
Tim's our resource man over here.
Yeah, number 24. I bumped their numbers for them. So it was ADQI 24 and POQI 8. So that was a great conferences for 2 days in Cambridge at the beginning of September. The manuscripts are currently being put together and will be submitted shortly. And watch this space.
Any big highlights from the meeting that you can reveal?
It was really talking a lot about the definitions of acute kidney injury and how that goes into long-term dysfunction, and also how we can monitor kidney health through the perioperative period. So
that was a big takeaway for me. Is the how do you make sure your beans are all right a few months later? And I think it's a really, really important public health takeaway. Back to the old perioperative medicine is population health.
All right, guys. Mike.
The other Tim, we'll call Mike. Yeah. So, I agree with Monty. We although we wrestle for hours around sort of definitions and criteria, the surprising thing was the limited data that there are about the post-op, and the data that there are really striking. And this is something that we haven't focused on that we really need to focus on.
And it's something you can take ownership of. If you've had surgery, and it's been fairly major surgery, you can ask about your creatinine. It's not a bad thing to do. And then go and see your family doctor a bit later if you had a bump and make sure things have gone back to normal. Or as you're talking about yesterday, dipstick your own urine. It shouldn't have protein in it. If it does, go see someone.
Gentlemen, As usual, Tim, thank you so much. Mike, thank you for sitting down with us on TopMedTalk. Always a pleasure to have you here.
It's the first one of these I've ever done where the closing suggestion was to dipstick your own urine, which I like.
Well,
on that fine note.
I must confess, when you were saying ATKI POQI, I was thinking, put your right foot in.
Shake it
All right, that's next. That's going to be on Channel 3 later on our Silent Disco. Well, again, guys, thank you for joining us. Thanks for listening to TopMedTalk. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to TopMedTalk. You can do that on TopMedTalk.com. When you subscribe, we send you a newsletter, but we don't send them and push them out, every week, every day kind of thing. But we do send you a welcome email that tells you how to get TopMedTalk delivered to your podcatcher, your app every day, so you can keep up to date on what we're doing. And if you enter right now during this week, you will also have a chance to win our beautiful bespoke Marshall amp. So if you're watching on Twitter, here's right here. Super awesome. We did it last year, and it was a great hit, a great success. I will send it to you and mail it to you. So if you're here at ASA, you don't have to carry it on the plane. I
thought you were going to hand deliver it.
I will. Okay. And with a song. Okay. And then, Monty, what do the subscribers get now whenever you sign up for TopMedTalk?
We have, because we have such an enormous back catalogue, we have decided to put out some box sets, as we called it. So we've grouped things together. So we have the Perioperative Coach first episode. So it's about 10 to 12 episodes there through the perioperative pathway. And we have the editor's pick. So picked out 10 specials. And I'm looking at the numbers. They're going very, very well. That's popular, grabbing those. I just remember we did a series called Fluid Matters, which is a 6-part series. We'll put that out soon.
Yeah.
We'll do that as a follow-up.
Yeah, be our next set. Again, thanks for listening to TopMedTalk, and we will be here until 1 o'clock today. We have a couple more conversations throughout the rest of the afternoon, or day and afternoon, so thanks for listening. Cheers!
TopMedTalk.
Just a quick reminder, subscribe to TopMedTalk. We're a daily source of news and conversation focused on perioperative care. We bring you all the latest talk from all the major conferences in the perioperative space. We can also be found on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and we now have a free mailing list with special offers and additional goodies for subscribers. Go check us out at TopMedTalk.com. That's www.topmedtalk.com.